Your alternative talk radio contact. The Planet. KGRAradio.com.
With infinite complacence, people went to and fro over the earth about their little affairs, serene in the assurance of their dominion over this small, spinning fragment of solar driftwood, which by chance or design, man has inherited out of the dark mystery of time and space.
Welcome to another edition of Into the Fray. Got a few things here before we jump into tonight's episode. First off, a hello to new insiders, Teresa, Nathan, and Arno. And Arno actually, he purchased an Into the Fray logo t-shirt, and he's been sporting it out and about. And actually, last week, he's a musician, and he did a gig. And he wore his ITF shirt on stage. So huge high five to Arno. Thank you very much, sir. Janine Healy. Janine has been relentless in her pursuit of a certain person to come on this show. Not going to mention who that is right now, of course. But I just want to say thank you, Janine. There is a new design up on intothefrayradio.threadless.com added to the Into the Fray logo that you can get. You can put it on women's t-shirts, tank tops, coffee mugs, cell phone cases, men's hoodies, men's t-shirts, all sorts of things. You can now get the main homepage image from intothefrayradio.com, which is 100% born, bred, and executed by Mister-Sam Shearon. I have titled that Surrounded, so you can get the Into the Fray logo, and you can also get Surrounded as a design and put it on whatever you want. Last but not least, here in the background, I have been working on a very special project with a very special person. For now, it's going to stay just straight to the point. I'm sure you guys will hear more about this later. Here is what we are looking for. Those ingrained very deeply in the following: Satanists, Raelians, voodoo and black magic practitioners, parapsychology majors, and a dogman. That is also one of the subjects. So, I love that word. Everybody, right? Dogman. First-hand witnesses, those knowledgeable on hotspots or has a location that they personally research. And it would be incredible also to speak to any tribal and or local historians in said areas as well. If you have the whole package, great. If you have a sighting but you don't go out anymore because it scared the hell out of you, totally fine. Get a hold of me. Email Shannon at intothefrayradio.com, or of course you can get a hold of me through any of the social media outlets at any time. So again, that's Satanists, Raelians, voodoo and black magic practitioners, parapsychology majors, and the subject of Dogman. The story, as mentioned in tonight's episode by Sean, is now up on the blog, so feel free to check that out, intothefrayradio.com. And now to Clint for the laundry list.
Welcome to another episode of Into the Fray, leering at you from the woodline. Visit the mothership at intothefrayradio.com. There you can find all the episodes, the blog posts, ITF gear, and sign up for the free guest newsletter. The weekly show is, of course, always free and available in all podcatchers, but if you'd like to support the show, and why wouldn't you, go to the website and click Become an Insider, which in turn gets you extra content each and every month. And by the way, if you would be so kind as to leave a rating and review in your listening platform of choice, Cosmic Karma shall be yours. Be part of the discussion by joining the interactive ITF Facebook group. Follow on Twitter at ITF_radio and Instagram. If you have an experience that you'd like to share, email Shannon at intothefrayradio.com or call the hotline anytime at 844-866-3366. Thanks so much for listening. Now, if you would be so kind, buckle up your safety belts. Put that tray table in the upright position. Liftoff is upon us.
So this is for the main show, and what people for the main show need to know is that you and I have already spoken. In fact, we had a 2-hour-long conversation that got posted for Insiders last month. It was entitled Insider Keeping the Gate. That's just the title that I came up with for it. But we talked about everything from past lives, phantoms, apparitions, divine interventions, and even possible contact with demonic entities. And a lot of that centered around your friend's home. Mm-hmm. And it's the same friend that we are going to talk about today. And I think, refresh my memory, we're just going to call him Jay, right?
Jay, right.
Yeah.
Right.
A lot of the stories, most all of the stories had to do with Jay on that Insider episode. So if anybody wants to check that out, that's up there for Insiders. But this one, of course, it's real heavy and it's sad. This is not a lighthearted tale, so just to warn everybody. And you know what I was just joking about with just holding the Ouija planchette and telling people I'm not using a board. I used to when I was younger, but tales like we're gonna hear today is probably a really good reason to avoid doing such things. They're pretty to look at and hang on your wall. I know even Sam likes to collect Ouija boards, and he just hangs the board on his wall, which I think that's a nice little decorating touch. I might have to do that, but
yeah, that's kind of cool.
I don't mess with them. Even though I would love for something odd to happen. I always say that, but then lights go out and it's dark and it's quiet, and I'm like, never mind, just kidding.
Right.
I didn't mean it. All right, well, let's go ahead and jump into this about Jay. And if you wouldn't mind also, just as a caveat at the end, that little touch that you added at the end, I don't know if you're okay to share that. About the light, about the lamp.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
That was pretty cool. So if you
right.
wouldn't, I didn't know if you wanted to for sure share that. So I wanted to ask you. Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
definitely.
let's talk about Jay.
Okay.
Just a little bit, and then what ended up happening. You don't have to touch a lot on the backstory. Like I said, we covered a lot of that on Insider. But just to give them a little background on you guys' relationship, so we can set that up for people.
Okay. Him and I were best friends, and we first met, was in 7th grade. I'd come out of living with my dad, and I moved to be with my mom. And Dad had been very abusive to me as a kid. And I was just coming out of that, and I was just kind of finally opening up, and I met him, and we hit it off right away. And we started getting into a lot of the paranormal stuff. And we were these geeky kids doing experiments on, the Ouija boards and seances. And we had our own little ghost hunting group and stuff. And it was amazing. We did some really cool stuff, and we experienced some crazy shit with everything that we did, all the books that we went through and stuff. And it was cool, and it was fun, and he wasn't my only friend, but the friendship that we had was special. It was something unique, and he was right there at that point in my life where I was coming out of something heavy, and I had no outlet in my life to get that weight that I had on me, to get it out. And he was my outlet. He would let me just go out to his house and vent and punch walls and anything I needed to do. We did these crazy experiments. And, he was a good guy.
Yeah, which a lot of those experiments actually worked. I mean, worked in quotation marks as far as some of it was a little scary and freaky, right?
Yes.
But yeah, and for anybody that's like, oh, why is John punching walls? Well, it's a whole backstory, and we really dug into it on that Insider episode. I'm not going to make him go through that again because the things that his father that he was doing to him, Sean, and his sister were just unbelievable. So we're not going to dig into that. But if all you did, if that was the worst was punching walls, then I think you did pretty damn good, Sean.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. That seems pretty mundane compared to, I think, the way that other people handle that kind of stuff. So,
oh man, no kidding.
Yeah. Okay, so we kind of got the backstory on you and Jay, and that you guys were really close. But there was a time when you guys, you did lose contact, right?
We did. We got out of high school, and we did lose contact. And there was a point during this time where we were kind of testing the whole adulthood thing. And I was meeting new friends, and I was doing my thing. And he went and got himself married. And it was a shock to all of us. Not that he couldn't do it, but, being the geeky nerd kind of kids that we were, for someone to get the girl and do that, it was pretty crazy. And a buddy of mine and myself, we took him aside and we talked to him because this girl kept hitting on us behind his back. And I don't want to get in depth about that stuff. She was trying to do things that a wife shouldn't be doing behind her husband's back. And, we took Jay aside and we told him, we said, man, this is not right. This is not good. And he got very defensive and he got very angry. And he cut off our friendship. I mean, that was it. God, it was probably 2 or 3 years before we saw each other and we finally spoke again.
Oh, that's interesting. That wasn't in the email. I didn't know that.
No.
So that was the reason that you guys actually stopped talking. Holy smokes. It was because of her.
It was. Yeah.
That's too bad.
And when we finally reconnected, I mean, she was there. She was a part of it. So it was kind of a strange, uncomfortable, man. I don't know. I just, it was weird. It was weird though. It was strange, looking back on the stuff that we went through, to have such a prolonged separation and to just essentially flip the switch on our friendship. And it was tough.
Yeah, because you guys, I mean, it seemed like if you weren't in school, you guys were around each other all the time.
We were inseparable. I'm nonstop, man. We had everyone either think that we were brothers or, like we were dating or a couple. I mean,
the rumors were there, right?
They were.
I mean, that's just what happens. It doesn't matter if you're a boy or a girl. If you hang out that much with somebody, people are like going, what's really going on there?
Exactly.
You're like, I love you, man. I love you. Not like that. I just love you.
Right. Yeah. We messed with their head too, so I mean, there's no wonder there was rumors.
Just because people are silly. I won't use the word stupid, but that's pretty much what I meant.
Right.
So if you're gonna be like that, we'll just go ahead and feed that fire because it's just funny.
Exactly. Yeah. So, I mean, that kind of led up to the email I sent you, that first one. And it had been, I don't know, like I said, it had been at least 2 or 3 years. And he had moved from here and went to live in Casper with his wife. And, he kind of settled into the married life. I wouldn't quite say adult life because he was Jay, and kind of hold on to that inner child thing was part of who he was. But we had lost touch, and I was out shopping one day and I ran into his sister and they're like, man, he's at the house if you want to stop by and see him. And his whole family knew, our friends knew the kind of distance and separation we had. So I did. I went out there and saw him. And it was this weird thing where, like, instantly all that kid stuff we did together came up. And it's like we wanted to talk about, everything that was going on. But his wife was there and there was this kind of apprehension. It was a little awkward. Had she not been there, maybe it would have been different. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I was unemployed at the time, and he asked me if I wanted to go back to Casper with him. That they were going to be heading out, and I could stay with them a couple days. We can kind of catch up on stuff, and I thought it was a good idea, even with her around. And I tried to do that. She's his wife. I'm not going to be disrespectful, kind of thing. So I was nice to her, and I was gracious, and she was up for it too. I don't know what her reasoning was, but
right.
So yeah, I drove with them. We went to Casper and kind of caught up on stuff, movies we'd been seeing, some of the like paranormal stuff that we'd each been dabbling in. Not a whole lot. He had gotten himself this bag of runes, and this was his obsession for pretty much the entire time we had lost contact. And I don't know, the runes are kind of like tarot cards in a way. He got all the stones. They were in this little leather pouch, and they were with him everywhere he went. When I ran into him at his mom's house, he even had them like tied to his belt buckle.
Wow.
Yeah. And he would use them to like read fortunes on people, and he did it as a way to communicate with ghosts. He had like the Ouija board, and he would use this kind of along the same lines.
Have you ever heard of anybody carrying them around like that?
No, not really. I haven't. And, I've heard with those and with along the lines of tarot cards that they're very personal. Mm-hmm. And, you kind of imprint your energy on them, and other people aren't supposed to touch them and use them. And I don't know. I think maybe it had something to do with that he was just trying to put more of his energy, his kind of self into it.
Okay. Well, that makes more sense then.
Yeah.
If that's the thinking behind them.
Right. And I mean, he was kind of I don't know. He was an oddball, and the way he did stuff and the reasoning on his approach to certain things, it didn't always make sense to the rest of us. We just had to, that's just Jay. That's the way he is.
Right.
Yeah. So we were heading there, and they were telling me about this little tiny house that they started renting, and they said it was haunted, and there was just tiny little activity. They said they would hear noises in there, and they would hear just tapping on the wall. They go out in the living room, they hear something in the bedroom. They go in the bedroom, they'd hear something out in the living room. Nothing too big. It sounded like, but he always made it seem smaller than it actually was. It was kind of a say, like from the childhood when we had where we saw the image like stand up, the ghost that was in their living room. He's like, yeah, that's just, that's so and so. It's no big deal. And I'm like freaking out because it's just.
You're like, oh, just so and so, huh? Okay. Pleasure to meet you. Time to go.
So and so, the invisible roommate.
Yeah.
I don't know. So, and it was weird because as we talked, she was, I don't know, she was kind of quiet, partly because we were talking about stuff that she didn't understand, she wasn't into. And he seemed different, I guess. It had been a few years, and we had both done some growing up. But it was, I don't know, it was just a strange interaction. It was a strange conversation. We tried to go back to the stuff we did as kids and the craziness. And I don't know, I was hoping that this weekend would be a thing we could reconnect and reestablish something that we had kind of let go over the years.
Right.
So we got there, and we parked in this alleyway. In this little house that they lived in was, it was so strange. It was not on the street, and it was kind of back in behind the houses. And they were all rentals, this whole area. They were each of the houses. And he had to park in the alleyway, and you had to walk back to the house. There wasn't even a driveway up to it. And I don't know, they thought that maybe at one time it had been a guest house or something, because it was small. It just had one little tiny bathroom, one little tiny bedroom. And as you walked in behind these houses, there were a bunch of trees. So literally it looked like a little hobbit hole, just kind of set back. Yeah, it was different. I'd never seen, and they had a half address. So it was like 100 and a half, weird. So they couldn't even recognize it as a full house.
Yeah, you said maybe it had been a guest house or something at some point, or like a casita or something. Yeah.
Yeah, right. We parked in the driveway, or in the alleyway, and we started walking back there, and immediately, as soon as we broke through that, I saw it through past the trees. I felt uneasy about the place. I felt like there was, I don't know, I've always had that feeling, that sensation of being around being in the presence of, undead or ghostly or whatever the thing might be. And I felt it a lot in this place. It was very uncomfortable. And we hadn't even stepped into the place yet, and I was already feeling that. We walked in, they opened the door, and I felt it more. And it was an uneasy feeling. We had the awkwardness from not seeing each other in a while. We had the uneasiness of this strange house. So I don't know. We just we talked, we hung out. I tried to dismiss all that stuff. I was, talking to his wife and seeing how she was doing and how their marriage was going. And it was strange because it seemed like the two of them were uneasy with each other as well. And we would learn later on the extent of that. And I don't know, I might hit on that later. So, as most of the times is when Jay and I hung out, we talked about kind of trying to communicate with whatever was in the house to see if we could call something out, make something happen. He had a Ouija board there in the house, and it wasn't anything special. It was, like one of those ones you could buy at Kmart or something. And they were like a Mattel. I don't know. It was just a cheapie, and it was the same one him and I had used for years. So we definitely had some practice on that particular board.
Oh, it was in fact the same board that you spoke about before. Oh my gosh! Yeah.
Right.
That board has some miles.
It does. Yeah.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
I know, and there is a crazy history on that board too. I mean, we opened portals with it. We talked to spiritual contacts and ghosts, and it was crazy. And I was kind of shocked to see that there. God, I can't imagine the kind of stuff that was attached to it.
Yeah.
Crazy. So so here we are. We set up the night, and he'd been drinking some beers. I had a couple beers, and his wife, she was smoking pot. She had plenty of that. She was just kind of giggly and red-eyed and all that stuff. And we went into it, and her and I initially, we started on the board. And as we started on the board, Jay had his runes out, and he preferred to do the runes. So he was concentrating on those. And we kind of dimmed the lights, and we lit some candles. By this time, it was starting to get dark outside. And this little tiny house was already dark. There was like...
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah, it was.
All those trees and everything. You painted a nice picture of it, so I can imagine it. You're like, it didn't need any help to be darker.
Yeah, right. There's the little tiny window in the kitchen and one in the living room. Mm-hmm. So it was, I don't know, it was pretty dark in there. We had quite a few candles lit. As we were doing this, we also kind of took on the approach of like a seance. So we were communicating through the board, we were communicating through his runes, and we were kind of talking out to the house itself, trying to just verbally communicate to whatever was there. And that chill that I felt when I first came up to the house, it was 10 times worse in this house, being inside than it was outside. It was just, God, it was horrible. It was. It really made my skin crawl. And I don't know why I was doing what I was doing. I kept thinking, okay, this is about Jay. We're going to, I don't know. I don't know what I was thinking. I just went along with it. And the whole thing was strange because when him and I would do these things and experiment with these things when we were kids, we had a process. We had, I guess you could call it like a scientific method to what we did. You know, he had the certain responsibility and I had the certain things I did. And step by step, we knew as we went through this stuff, how to do and how to approach and how to communicate. And we didn't do any of that stuff this night. It was just whatever goes. We had, you know, his wife who had never done this stuff before, and she was messing with it, and she was what I thought was in the wrong frame of mind to approach this. And
because you guys weren't smoking weed, but she was.
She was, yeah. I mean, I don't know. We might have had like a contact buzz off it,
right?
But no, we had a couple beers, and we were level-headed. I mean, we knew what was going on. So we were just sitting there at first. We were doing the simple thing. Well, who's here? You know, show yourself, identify yourself. And again, we heard a few noises. We heard, it was like scratching coming from the bedroom, kind of like like on the wall, kind of scratching.
That's creepy.
It is.
Anytime I hear that in a story, I'm like, nah, that's yucky. That's just yucky.
I know.
Scratching.
I know. And you're sitting there, and you get the little alarm in your head going off. You're thinking, it's just a rat. It's a mouse in the woods. So that happened. There was some tapping. We heard the toilet like flush by itself. You know, as if like the water leaked out and it refilled. It kind of did this thing right in the middle of it. And, you know, Jay's like, oh, that's strange. As if it had never done it before. So we had all these little tiny things, enough to freak a person out, but not to make you like run out of the house or anything. And then Jay did what Jay always does. And he challenged this thing, this entity, whatever it was, to make itself known. And he's like, you know, you don't scare me. You can't do anything. You can't, you know, whatever. You're just wasting our time. trying to antagonize it into doing something big. And his wife and I were kind of giggling nervously. He's like, oh, okay, you know, we're already hearing noises.
You know what's funny about you and Jay is that now this will be out of context a little bit for the folks that haven't heard the Insider episode, but you guys went through so much that if I was playing the Ouija board and I had like scratches and weird noises and then, you know, the toilet emptying and then filling, and I would have the mindset like, I can control the weather. I am God. Like, I would just think it was the most amazing thing, but you guys had already been through so much that you're just like, kind of, Jay's like, no, we need more, dude.
Exactly. And that's how it was. And, you know, that's how we were when we were young and we first started getting into that stuff. It was like, oh my God. You know, and we played Dungeons and Dragons. So,
of course, we all did. Yes.
Right,
high five. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're right. It's like, I am a god.
I will control the winds and the waters. You know, like, but Jay's like, oh no, this is little girl stuff. We got to keep going here. Scratches, please.
Yeah.
Get out of here with that baby stuff. Yeah. So, okay. So sorry, I had to, that was interjection of my part. Sorry. So he's taunting it and saying, we're going to need more than this.
Yeah. Yeah. He's like, come on, that's not shit. You don't scare us. And at that moment, I saw candles flicker. And I've always been kind of dismissive about it because it could be anything. Someone could have breathed or something. Mm-hmm. But there was a lot of candles, and pretty much every single one of them flickered. They didn't blow out. And the whole atmosphere of the house changed immediately. You just had that kind of quiet electric, I don't know, unless you've experienced it and you've kind of felt that change, it's hard to explain. And Jay got really quiet and he just sat there and he was kind of looking around. He put his runes down on the table hard and he looked agitated. He looked just kind of confused. Kind of looked at us for a second and looked around, and then he got up and he walked into the kitchen. In the kitchen, it was kind of open. It just opened into the living room, and he went back into the back corner, and it was far enough back, and it was dark enough that we couldn't see him standing in that back corner. And his wife and I started looking at each other like, what the hell's going on? What's he doing? I'm like, I don't know. He's your husband. Go see. She's like, I'm not going to go see. You go see. So we're sitting there. We're just kind of bickering back and forth, and just I don't know. And the thing is it's Jay, and Jay had these quirky little habits and these weird social things that he did. And then while we're sitting there, her and I are kind of gesturing to each other. You know, I heard him. It's like, Sean, come here. I need to talk to you. And his voice was just very calm, very, I don't know, kind of a lack of emotion, I guess. And I looked at her and my eyes got big. It's like, what the hell's going on? And I'm like, well, why don't you come out here and talk to us? Just chill out, you know. He's like, no, I need you to come in here and talk to me. I was like, oh man, I knew it was going to be an argument. It was going to be something strange. I just, my gut felt sick. I wasn't comfortable with the situation. Mm-hmm. And I was, thinking to myself, I did not come all the way to Casper to do this shit. So I reluctantly, I got up and I started walking towards the living room, and I stopped just outside the entrance to it, just inside the living room. And I can kind of see his silhouette at the back. He was just kind of leaning up against the counter. And I couldn't see his face, but I knew he was standing there. And I'm like, what do you want? What's going on? And there was this moment of silence. And then he jumped out of the darkness. He jumped from the back of the kitchen and he came at me, and he had a butcher knife in his hand, like the biggest knife I have ever seen. Mm. And he lunged at me. He's like, I want to kill you. And he just screamed it at the top of his lungs. It just lunged at me. And I saw his face. I saw his face at that moment. And for that first second, I didn't comprehend what I saw. And I kind of sidestepped and I punched him in the chest and I screamed and I didn't mean to punch him. I didn't want to hit him. And I didn't want to hurt him because I'm like twice his size. I'm a big guy compared to him. It was this guttural reaction. And I sat there for a second. I comprehended what I saw. And his face, it was not his face. It didn't look like him. And I've thought this image has been in my head since this happened. This was like 25 years ago. And that image, and I've thought about it. What I saw was not human. Mm. I know that for sure. It was as if it was like they made a mask out of Jay's face. Mm. It was kind of draped over the real face. Mm-hmm. And I saw eyes that were solid black. And I saw a mouth that stretched back from ear to ear. And it wasn't like grinning or anything. Yeah. Because there was this complete lack of emotion in the face. It was just, I don't know. It was horrible. And he stopped right when I punched him, and he looked at me and he was shocked and stunned. And he looked around for a moment as if he didn't know where he was, like he'd woken up from sleepwalking or something. Mm. And he looked at me, he looked around, really confused, really lost. And he dropped the knife and he ran out the front door of the house. That was horrifying. It was, God, I can't. So,
but let me just interrupt you real quick.
Sure.
The eyes being solid black, and then the mouth just looked abnormally large.
Yeah.
As you're punching him, does that all instantly go away and then it's Jay again? Or was it still a second or two after the punch where he's still coming back through that?
It came back when I punched him. Mm-hmm. And the thing is I broke eye contact with him for a minute. So I kind of sidestepped and I yelled and I punched at the same time.
Gotcha. Mm-hmm.
So in just that brief moment, it was him again.
Oh. Oh man, that got me because you didn't mention the eyes and the mouth in the email, so that was a nice little surprise right there. I wasn't expecting that. Oh, it was already creepy enough because you were like, I just knew it wasn't human, but I didn't know about the other stuff. Holy smokes.
Yeah. Oh, man, nothing in my life has scared the shit out of me more than that split second. And part of it is, this was my buddy. This was someone I've grown up with, and we've been through some serious shit. The things we'd experienced and the things we did, but this was, man, it was a whole nother level. So he ran out of the house, and it was chilly outside. And he had shorts on and a t-shirt. He didn't have socks or shoes, no jacket, nothing. And stunned, I turned around and I looked at his wife, and she was as stunned as I was. Probably more so because, she had never done this thing before. Yeah. And the first time she We messed with the Ouija board, and the first time we did any of this stuff in her presence, her freaking husband gets overtaken by God knows what and runs out the door into the night.
With barely any clothes on, and it's freezing cold.
Yeah.
Almost
exactly.
tries to butcher you up with a massive knife. Did you? Oh,
Yes.
Did she even realize that even happened? Because I'm assuming he probably dropped the knife when you punched him, or did he? I mean, did she even realize that little incident happened at that point?
She did. And the thing is he's left-handed. Okay, so I stepped to my right, but the knife was in his left hand, so it was in the center of my body.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of the way we were standing to each other. I stepped to the right, I think far enough that the knife was, because she was right behind me. She was almost directly over my shoulder.
Okay.
And I think as I stepped out, she saw the knife as he dropped it and saw the expression on his face.
Okay. That's true, because like you said, it was a tiny little house, and with the
Yeah.
living room and kitchen connected then. Okay.
Yeah. It was all right there. So in this moment, and from the time he ran out the door, from the time he tried to attack me till the time we went out the door was maybe 3 minutes. But I got to tell you, man, it was the longest 3 minutes of my life. It was crazy and intense. I tried to comprehend what was going on. I couldn't. I know what I saw, but my brain was still trying to process the image and trying to go back through what we did wrong. And then she was, I guess she was in shock. She wasn't hysterical. Maybe she was still kind of blitzed from smoking.
Right. Yeah, because she didn't get to see what you saw as far as his face changing goes.
No. She didn't see that. She just saw him attack me with the knife or try to.
Yeah.
So, and part of me was really pissed off. It's like, God, man, I could have stayed home. Part of me was like, this is a bad idea. Anyway, I looked at her and she was stunned, and she hid the Ouija board. I think she stuck it under the couch cushion or something. For some reason, she thought that was the source of what just happened.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it probably contributed. Maybe bringing that thing into the house was, I don't know. It kind of pulled it out. I'm not sure. But then her and I ended up having the strangest argument I've ever had. And this is hands down the weirdest conversation.
And this is after he's run out the door.
Yes, he's out the door. We're getting ready to go out after him. And we're trying to figure out what to do once we find him. And she's like, well, we'll bring him home. We'll get him to bed. I'll calm him down. And I'm thinking that's not going to be enough. It's like, I've known him for all these years. He's never done anything like this. I'm thinking, and I said, what we need to do is get a church, find some priest who can do an exorcism on him. Because I had no idea what to do. I had never called out, him and I both had never called out anything we couldn't control or dismiss. This was, so here we are, getting ready, putting our jackets on, walking out the door in front of this creepy house under the trees in the middle of the night with her crazy friend running around. Mm-hmm. And we're arguing about whether we should put him to bed or we should get a priest to have an exorcism. No idea. So we walked out, we got in the car, and we started driving around the neighborhood. And by this time, it had only been about 5 minutes. It had not been that long. But it still took us, it took us over an hour to find him. And I don't know if he would see us coming and he would like duck and hide. But when we found him, his We came up to him. We saw him just kind of slowly walking. He was shuffling down the sidewalk, and his face was down. His shoulders were just down. He looked defeated. He looked lost. And we sat there and rolled down the window, and we called at him. And he kind of looked over and sort of acknowledged us, but looked back down and kept walking. And finally, after about 10 minutes or so, she parked the car. She got out and convinced him to get back in the car, in the back seat, the back seat that was directly behind where I was sitting.
Of course. Yeah.
Now, when I talk about, getting that kind of chill feeling where you sense like there's a ghost nearby. Some people do. It's like that sensation of being watched or something. I had this going on, but it was 1,000 times stronger than anything. I just felt him behind me. My skin crawled. I didn't feel him back there. I felt whatever it was just staring me down. I just had myself convinced that he was going to jump over the seat, that he was going to attack me, that something horrible was sitting back there. And being around a person, now if you get a sense of their presence and who they are, and I did not feel that sitting behind me. Whatever was back there did not feel like Jay. We tried talking to him, and he sort of said a few words and he mumbled stuff. But mostly he stared out the window, and he had this blank look on his face. Just no emotions, no nothing. He was just not there. It was like he was in shock. Mm-hmm. And the thing is, I know deep down Jay probably suffered from some kind of mental disorder. Some of us thought maybe he was bipolar, some kind of like manic depressive kind of thing. And we knew that was in him. We always dismissed it because he was just Jay, and it was just part of his quirky nature. But I was also afraid that sooner or later there was going to be a trigger, something that just snapped, that broke this thing inside of him. And that's kind of the impression I got this night. At least at this moment, that's what I thought. Because, he didn't act like he was still possessed by some animal demon or whatever it was. He was just empty and defeated.
Well, yeah, and to piggyback, and you had already mentioned this in the email, but just to build upon what you said about what you guys had always thought, that he might have some kind of a mental displacement or disorder. But even if you do have that, how could you do that to your eyes or your face? And how would that transfer? That's where you're like, there's a disconnect there to where you can't just say, well, he was, having a mental breakdown at that point. That's a little bit more in depth, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he had dark brown eyes. And sometimes when he was drunk or something that was dark, they would look almost black. But, eyes, they got the white stuff in there. And
right.
What
he didn't have that.
No, he did not have that. What I saw was definitely not him. Which kind of scared me, because if you take that psychological thing and you add a spiritual component to it, mm-hmm. Man, you're messing with stuff that just...
Yeah.
So we got home, and she did what she wanted. She brought him in, laid him down, got him to bed. When we got to the house, the front door was open. I swear we shut that front door. Maybe we didn't. We were in kind of a panic when we rushed out. Who knows? But an open door was the least of our worries at the time. So yeah, she laid him down. She got him to bed. And it was pretty late by this time. There's still a few hours before sunup. And she gave me a blanket and, told me to go ahead and crash on the couch that night.
You're like, oh, thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll just fall right to sleep like a baby.
Right. That did not happen.
No.
It's like, oh, man. I sat there that night, and I thought about hitchhiking, getting back home to just take off. I didn't know anyone in Casper. I didn't know what to do, and I thought. So I laid there wide awake the whole night, jumping at every single noise I heard. And there were very few like unexplained noises. Mostly it was just creaking in the house and cars driving by. And it was the worst, longest night of my life. One of the worst. It was horrendous.
Yeah.
It was so bad. And I did not sleep. And had I slept, I probably would have had crazy nightmares. So it was probably a good thing I was wide awake the whole night. And then next morning, sitting there laying on the bed under this blanket, or on the couch under this blanket, and Jay walks out, literally smiling, happy. He's stretching like, hey, mister, how's it going? How you doing?
Mm.
As if nothing happened the night before.
You're probably going, Jay, really? Really, dude?
Yeah.
You don't remember any of that? So do you feel like he, honest to God, did not remember a single thing, or he was just acting like he didn't?
I don't know. He acted like he could not remember it.
But you did, did you run through the whole thing with him?
I asked him, I said, do you remember what happened last night? And he kind of sidestepped the question. He kind of avoided, and I assumed his wife did too. Maybe she didn't. And I'm like, man, that was some heavy shit that happened last night. What? He's like, I don't know. Don't know what you're talking about. And it's like, oh my God. So I don't know. He might have remembered, and he just didn't want to talk about it because maybe it freaked him out too. Or maybe he truly had no memory of what happened.
Do you think that, I'm just trying to picture the actual act of, you sidestepping and doing the kind of punch at the same time. And if you hadn't done that, would he have actually followed through with a knife, do you think?
Yeah, I do. And that's a shitty thing to say about him. He had, I knew inside of him that there was stuff that wasn't quite right, and stuff in his brain that wasn't quite wired right. I remember he wanted me, his dad gave him a gun. It was like a 44, this big old pistol. And he wanted a bunch of pictures taken with this gun. He's all pointing it and he's posing, and he just, man, I would love to just go out and shoot this thing. And I don't know. He owned an axe. He had a sword he had hanging up on the wall. He had kind of an obsession with weapons. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, mixing that with the fact that he was not himself at that moment. I kind of do. I kind of do think he might have gone through with it.
Yeah, it just seems like, it's easy to say, oh, well, he had a mental problem, and that was the cause of the whole thing. It will be probably blamed on that, but you can't really deny the fact that his face changed. How do you change the whites of your eyes? With if you have a mental disorder, don't think that's documented under the how-tos and how-dos of mental disorders. I don't think that's there.
No.
But it does make you wonder if someone that does have, like you said, the wiring that isn't quite right, if that in turn just makes them more open to having something demonic or dark attached to them and using them for whatever they might want to use them for, which seems like never a good thing.
Yeah, yeah. That's what I think. I completely agree with that. I think some people are, they're more susceptible to it. They don't have those certain things inside of them that that stand up to it or have a resistance to it. And, oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry. And doesn't it make you wonder, those people that say they hear voices, even if people that are actually in an asylum of some sort, right? And they are diagnosed with bipolar disorder, or they're schizophrenic, and, they're screaming about hearing voices. What if they really are? What if those voices are real, right?
I know.
And you're not like, oh, well, that's a crazy person just freaking talks, screams about voices, or even the guy that, it's not even a guy, I think it was a kid. Well, I call him a kid because, I think he's in his 20s or something, but
Yeah.
he went and he killed that couple in the garage in Florida and ate the guy's face off. Just calmly eating the guy's face, and the cops pull up, right? And they had to pull him off. He's calmly just munching away on some guy's freaking face. And
man.
He said that the voices told him to do it. And this is a kid that's never had any past with the law, or not that really means anything. People can go undetected for a long time and then go absolutely berserk, but makes you wonder. You're like, well, if there is some kind of weird wiring and those voices actually can get in and they are susceptible to that, like some kind of a radio transceiver. I don't know. It's just conjecture, but yeah, so a lot of people say that, and maybe they're just trying to get off reasons of insanity, right?
Yeah.
But maybe they're smarter. It's like Hannibal Lecter or something, just so smart that he just figures a way every time. But
yeah,
I don't know. That does not explain what you saw in that moment.
No, it was. I mean, I call it demonic, and the truth is, I don't know if it was. I don't know if it was spiritual or demonic, or it was something. And I've talked to a few of my Christian friends, and they kind of go along with what you said, that a lot of times psychological disorders are spiritual things, that they're. I mean, for Christians, everything are demons. It's all demonic.
Right.
And I don't necessarily believe that. I mean, if a bad person, someone who did just sick, messed up things in life dies, I kind of believe that follows them into the afterlife. But, with Jay, he kind of had that dark side, and he had a little bit of a messed up vibe. Right. We had a band, and at the time there were three of us, and my nickname was Ox. We decided that everyone in the band was going to have a nickname. And I was Ox, and our bassist, he was this tall, skinny guy, and he was Bones. And Jay, he gave himself the name Death. That was the nickname he gave himself. And he did. He kind of had that obsession. And I was thinking about this the other day. He played guitar, and he would play like Blackbird. He played Beatles songs and the most beautiful music. But then at the end of the day, when he'd lay down and go to bed, he would put in South of Heaven by Slayer and just crank this death metal.
And that's before he went to sleep.
Yeah.
Right. That's what I would blast, like, before I go into work. Like, when you have to be around customers and a bunch of people, you're like, I have to get prepared for my day. That's when you put on the death metal, not before bed. So, yeah. So, basically, the darkness mostly bled into anything and everything that he did.
It did. Yep. And it didn't help that his first, middle, and last name each had 6 letters in it. And he kind of bragged about that one. Yeah, that was different.
Yeah.
So I don't know. That next morning I was agitated. I was just pissed off that he wasn't acknowledging this crazy thing that happened the night before. And I should have been more sympathetic. I don't know. I just wanted out of that house, and I wanted out of that town, and I wanted to go home. And they did. Later that day, they drove me back home. Over the next few years, because it was years. He did eventually get divorced, and he did find out that she had been involved with a lot of guys. And I know that contributed to his state of mind. I know without a doubt it did. And, during that time, and he moved back home for a while, and then he ended up going back to Casper, and he said he just liked it more in Casper. He got a job at a restaurant there, and he was doing great. He eventually became the head chef in the restaurant there that he was cooking at. And I was very proud of him. I stopped talking to him. I severed contact with him, partly because I met my future ex-wife, and we had a kid together. So I was living my adult life, and he was living the best life that he could muster up.
Right.
And in, let's see, Christmas of 2001, he came to town. I didn't get to see him. I was working. I was busy, but I ran into his sister and his mom just a few days after that, at the beginning of January, and they told me that he was at the house and he was doing really well. He was happy. He was upbeat. He was really seemed like he was doing good. And just a few days after that, it was actually, I got the date written down. It was Saturday, January 12th of 2002. And I was sitting at home, and I had just laid my son down. He had just gone to sleep. He was just a baby at the time. And the wife, the ex-wife, she was at work. And I sat and I took out my acoustic guitar, and it was actually Jay's guitar. And he had lent it to me once, and I never did get it back to him. And I sat there and I was kind of playing some of the songs him and I had written. And I was thinking about him. I just got this overwhelming sense of guilt. Because it had been a long time since we had talked. That day that he drove me home after the night that happened in Casper, that was pretty much it. There was just no contact after that. And sitting there playing the guitar and thinking about the music we had made and seeing his family and stuff really made me just miss him and feel guilty for not having contact with him. And I decided that day that I would work through the week, and that next weekend I would just take the guitar. I would go to Casper and give him back the guitar and use that as a precursor to reconnecting with him and to talking to talk to him and just get all that stuff out. And so Monday, that like 2 days later, Monday, I was at work and I got a call from a mutual friend of ours. They said they'd been trying to get in touch with me the whole weekend, but I had changed phones. I had a new phone number. And she told me that Jay had passed away. And that his death was, it was self-inflicted. And it turns out that the day he entered my thoughts and I was playing the guitar, he died that day. And it was that evening that he died.
Jeez. Geez, that wasn't in the email. I didn't know about that. That I was going to ask you if there was a tie-in with the timing, and that's wow. Yeah. I didn't put that part, and
I don't know. I didn't know if I wanted to. It was hard. The whole thing was hard. So I just, God, I was heartbroken. That was a hard day. And his family, I did eventually connect with, but at the time, the only person I had to talk to was, my now ex-wife. She hated him. She wanted nothing to do with him. So I was just, I was alone in this, and I didn't know. I blamed myself for what happened, and it was hard. It was hard not to, because I knew the kind of things he was capable of, and I knew the kind of frame of mind that he was in. And I encouraged him to just be him, and to do these spiritual things that we did, the dark things and the Ouija board and all that stuff. And I felt like it all contributed to that darkness he had inside of him. And I did that. I had such guilt for what happened. So I went home that night, and the wife, she was still at work, and she was going to pick her son home up from the babysitter. So I was home alone. And I walked into the bedroom, and I sat at the corner of the bed, and I cried. I felt just hopeless, helpless. I didn't know what to do. I had never lost anyone before, like my great grandparents when I was little. But this was something totally different. And I sat there, and I cried, and I thought about him, and I said out to my room, I asked, it's like, why did you do this? Why did you have to do this? And right there, right as I asked that question, the light sitting next to my bed turned on. I mean, instantly as I said this question, that light turned on. And I knew it was him. I mean, I knew he was there. And it kind of goes back to this little thing that happened when we were kids, and I was at his house. We were sitting in the living room, him and I, and it was late at night, and it was his parents' house. And there's these two recliners, and we were sitting back, and we were watching TV, and there's a lamp, a big lamp that was in between the two chairs. And it was the same kind of lamp I had in my bedroom. It was one of those touch lamps. You just touch it, and it turns on. And he sat there, JB&J. He started antagonizing the ghosts that kind of hung out there in the living room. And he's like, come on, show yourself. You're not going to show yourself. You don't know what's going on. And right then the lamp turned off all by itself. And we giggled, and we were scared. And it was, of all the things that we had done, that was one of the funnest. It was one of the coolest. Mm-hmm. And the light, it turned on and off like 2 or 3 times. And then the TV went on mute by itself. And there's no way back then, this was like the 80s. So you couldn't hide a remote control and sneak it, because the remote controls back there were like the size of a Buick.
Yeah, exactly. You could change the channels with your elbows. Like the buttons were massive.
They were.
I miss those days.
I know. And they clicked when you hit the
button. Super loud. Yeah. It's like a metal door shutting.
It is. Yeah. Man.
Yeah, so the tie-in is just that's so cool. I mean, how do you even, I don't even know how to explain that. That is so cool.
It was awesome. It was,
God. Did you feel a little comforted at all? I mean, after that happened, you were feeling all this guilt, and after everything that you guys had been through, and then the horrific incident with the knife, I mean, did you feel comforted at all? Like he was saying, hey, it's okay, you know, like basically he made the decision and it's brought you a lot of pain, obviously, but do you feel comforted by just that simple lamp turning on?
I did completely. I truly felt like he came to tell me it was okay. That I don't know. It really did. It really brought me peace, and it brought me comfort. You know, we had joked with each other that if either one of us died, that we would go haunt the other one or visit the other one.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Well, there's another tie-in, right?
Right. I mean, as kids, that's what we do, right?
Right.
And he did. Man, he kept his word. He came and he saw me. And, you know, when I first wrote you, it was towards the beginning of December when I first wrote that email. And I remember it was towards the end of December, beginning of January, you had Cisco on. Mm-hmm. And she talked about how life goes on, that death is not the end, and that suicide isn't the end, that people who take their own life, they aren't punished, or that they
burning
go
in
on.
hell.
Yeah.
Because I would hate to think that too.
Just
because
I know.
someone's in horrific pain, and what a pain might be, and they decide it's enough for them. Like, really, there's automatically burning in hell.
Yeah, I did the Christian thing for a while, and I started having problems with it because of that. It's like, I know a lot of people who don't live their life according to the Bible and according to those rules. And I can't accept that they're going to suffer and burn. And Jay was broken, and he was scared, and it's not his fault that he didn't know how to face life and to do, the things that people sometimes take for granted. He just, right. And I couldn't accept that he would have to suffer for that. So I got to give it to Cisco. Those words that she said, they really kind of pulled it together for me. It brought me peace with all that.
Good. Because you did say that he didn't leave a note at all. There's no. Indication as to why, at least specifically. Yeah. We could guess.
We can guess.
Can I just say that I mean, thank you for sharing all of this with me. I mean, this is the second time that we've spoken, and of course we're online a lot together, back and forth, even in the group stuff, which is fun. But I really feel like I've gotten to know you, and of course Jay, through all of this, and I hope that he's happy wherever he is now. He's at peace, and even with what you guys went through in Casper that night wasn't a good thing. That wasn't the reunion that you wanted. But it's not like you were ever angry at him. You might have been scared as shit of him. Especially when he is like, "What's up, bro? Let's go get some coffee and go hang out." And you're like, "Excuse me." But I want to just thank you for coming forward with all this information. And you wrote me this email first, and then the other stuff came later, and that was basically a prequel, if you will, to what we just talked about today. But all that insider stuff was actually the second email, and there was so much stuff that you guys went through together, and it just made it all the more sad for me. After knowing what does happen at the end of the story, is I felt like I got to know Jay a lot. And you did send me a picture of Jay, which I won't be sharing with anybody, but it was just nice to put a face with everything that I had heard about him. So I hope he's, just rest in peace, Jay, because I know he's gone through a lot in his life. So.
Absolutely. And I really appreciate you giving me this chance. I wanted to tell his story, and I want him to be remembered. This was really important. I sincerely appreciate it.
Oh, no. It's all you. It's all you.
Yeah.
Just being willing to talk about this stuff.
Yeah.
You guys went through a lot of shit. And
Yeah,
then
we
to
did.
have it end like that, it cannot be easy to talk about. So thank you.
Yeah.
Just to lighten it up a little bit here at the end. So I just posted that new, I call them the weird writers. I just posted that one from Deborah Frediani of the Visions Paranormal Society. She wrote a little article about the ghost of Amy. It was this ghost that was in her house for a time. And I was just saying, I haven't really even mentioned this in a long time, but if you guys out there have a personal story, or if there's something that you want to research, like I have a weird writer that he likes to research. He did the Vril Mythos, and he also did the Black Knight Satellite. He's not saying he saw the Black Knight Satellite. He just did research and wrote an article about it. But, send me whatever you want. I can put it up on the website. I'm not really looking for fictional stories. I mean, if it's research, that's one thing. But, if you had a personal story that actually happened to you, that would be ideal, of course. And I can link anything you guys want me to link. You can have a pen name or just a first name, or be anonymous, and just send me a little bio with it. And I'd be happy to put it up on the website. But you sent me something. And okay, so yesterday I was like, oh yeah, I'll definitely post this. Okay, I'm going to admit something. I had only skimmed it at that point. Like I skimmed through, which I do a lot, and I'll come back to it later. Well, I came back to it at the wrong time because I read it last night before bed, every word.
Oh no.
And it creeped me out really bad. I was like, oh shit, I shouldn't have skimmed that because I was reading it during the day. It would have been better. I was literally in bed, lights out, freaking going, are you kidding me? No, but that's awesome. And in fact, I think I might read that on video and put it up like today or tomorrow for the insiders, and then put that up on the website later, just in normal text form. But
Right on.
I was like, I scared the shit out of myself reading it.
Yeah,
in the
it needs to
dark.
be a disclaimer on.
Yeah, that's what I get for skimming. Should have just
Right.
should have just read it. In fact, I think I skimmed it when I was just like walking around the house, kind of doing light cleaning, and I had my phone in my hand, and then Forgetting Sarah Marshall was on in the background.
Yeah.
That would have been a perfect time, because there's no lighter, funnier movie than Forgetting Sarah Marshall. So I would have been like, oh man, that's freaking creepy, instead of being like, oh my God, there's something coming to get me. Oh man. No, big high five on that. Thanks for sending that. And I will,
you bet.
I'll be
That was
getting that
fun.
up. Well, Sean, I appreciate all your time. We've spent a number of hours together now talking about really cool and creepy stuff. And I just thank you so much.
Yeah, and thank you. I appreciate that you've made a forum like this for people like me. Because man, there's a lot of us out there, and we have stories to tell. We got stuff we'd like to get out, and the way you've done it, the safe place you've created, it's amazing.
Thank you. I try to. I try to provide that little nook that we can all just kind of hunch in, and nobody's gonna think you're crazy or nutty or point fingers and laugh at you. It's not Carrie. They're not gonna laugh at you. So
no, right.
Well, we will be in touch, good sir.
Yeah. Take care.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.
Well, I'm so-and-so. I was given this name by my parents. I've been to such and such a college. I've done these things in my profession. I produce a little biography. Buddha says, forget it. That's not true. That's some story. That's all gone. That's all past. I want to see the real you are now. Well, nobody knows who that is. Because we don't know ourselves except through listening to our echoes and consulting our memories. But then there's a real you, and that again leads us back to this question. Who are you? That is the real you. We shall see how they play with this exam by the koans to get you to come out of your shell. find out who you really are. Up in the chain. And this is what binds you to the the wheel of birth and death. But when you know that every moment in which you are is the only moment, this comes into Zen. A master will say to somebody, get up and walk across the room. And he comes back and he says, where are your footprints? They've gone. So where are you? Who are you? When we are asked who we are, we usually give a kind of recitation of a history.